What's up, guys? It's Sean with Plus Money Media. I just want to give you my picks and what bets I'm placing for the upcoming UFC events this Saturday. UFC 272, Covington versus Masvidal. Now, every event is different, so these pick videos are going to look different in structure. For example, I've found pay-per-views usually have more parlay opportunities than non-pay-per-view events. But for this one, I want to start off talking about the straight bets or singles. This will include obviously just straight bets on individual fighters, as well as prop bets, which can be anything from a certain fighter to win by knockout, decision, or submission, whether or not a certain round will start, or whether or not the fight will last the full distance. I'm gonna work my way up the card as I go, but the first fight I want to break down is Tagir Ulanbekov versus Tim Elliott. Ulanbekov is a Russian wrestler. I think the main theme of this fight is going to be how well can Tim Elliott deal with his wrestling, and not many people seem to deal with it well. Tim Elliott is a crafty veteran, but he is toward the tail end of his career, and Ulanbekov is on the rise. I definitely see Ulanbekov winning, which we'll talk about later in the parlay part of this video. But one thing I did notice is that Ulanbekov has 6 submissions out of his 13 pro wins, and out of Tim Elliott's last 5 losses, 3 came by submission. So I'm going to go with Ulanbekov by submission on this one. MGM has this paying out at plus 300 or 3-to-1 odds. I would feel comfortable placing maybe 1 unit or more on this one, which a unit is just your normal bet size. It could be anywhere from $10 to $20, depending on the size of your bankroll and how you personally handle risk. So yeah, I think anywhere from $7.50 to $15 for most people would be a great bet on this one. Most of Ulanbekov's wins are submission or decision, so I don't see him getting a knockout, and I really do think he'll be able to control Elliott. The next fight on this list is going to be Nurmagomedov versus Brian Kelleher. As you might have guessed, Nurmagomedov is a wrestler from Dagestan. This fight is actually really similar to the one we just covered, where you have a young up-and-coming wrestler from Russia versus a tough, crafty veteran who is at the tail end of their career. Kelleher had been publicly talking about UFC fighter pay, and people are saying this is just the UFC's way at kind of getting back at him, just throwing him into the fire against Nurmagomedov. I think Nurmagomedov is going to dominate and get the finish. I'm personally going with Nurmagomedov by knockout because MGM is paying out plus 550. By the way, whether you bet on FanDuel, MGM, Caesars Palace, Bovada, or any other site, it might be a little different, but no matter where you go, it's going to be similar to what I'm giving you, which is MGM or any of the other sportsbook. At plus 550, you can probably put a little bit less than 1 unit. Anything from $5 to $20 would be safe. Now, the only way I do see for Kelleher to win is by submission, which would pay out at plus 1,000 or 10-to-1 odds. So if you're worried about that happening, you could sprinkle a little bit of money on that. Also, Nurmagomedov has been known to win by submission, which pays out at plus 200 on MGM. I'm just personally going with KO because of that higher price. And since I think Nurmagomedov is going to win, we're going to talk about him later in the parlay section, which is why it doesn't matter if he wins by submission or decision. The next fight up the card that I want to cover for straight bets is going to be Mariya Agapova versus Marina Moroz. Now this one is going to be a little bit heated. These girls used to train with each other. They have a little bit of bad blood. They've been talking a lot of shit back and forth. So for that reason, I don't think this one will go the distance. I think this is going to be a really tense and heated fight. Agapova fights heated as it is, so I'm interested in watching this one. 8 of her 10 pro wins are by stoppage or submission, so she is a finisher. Marina Moroz is a Ukrainian boxer and has 5 wins by armbar. Between everything going on in the Ukraine right now and their personal beef, she might come out guns blazing for this fight. So I really don't think this one is going to go the distance. MGM is paying out plus 125 for it not to go the distance, so slightly plus money. I would put anywhere from 1 to 2 units on this, so anywhere from maybe $10 to $30. I think this is going to be a fast-paced fight, and I do think somebody's going to get finished. If you're worried about it going to decision, pick whichever fighter that you're leaning towards and place a prop for her to win by decision. Both of these options will pay out at plus money, so it will be a good hedge, and you will net a profit if either of them win. But of course, know that you're risking more and there is a chance of both bets losing. I'm personally just going with the won't go the distance prop. The next fight I want to talk about is Marina Rodriguez versus Xionan Yan. These two women have very impressive records, they're really tough, and they're young up-and-comers. I'm strongly leaning on Marina Rodriguez. She's got better stand-up, and I think Yan has shown some serious holes in her grappling. There have been times where she's just been held down and had no answer for it. Marina is also a really mean chick, and I do think she'll be able to take her down and hold her down and get a finish. For Marina to win by knockout, MGM is offering plus 330, which is more than 3-to-1 odds, and for her to win by sub, she's actually listed at plus 1400. This is a perfect fight just to sprinkle $5 on her to win by submission, just in case she does get a choke, and maybe you can place one unit on her to win by knockout at plus 330. So, $10 to $20 for most of us at 3-to-1 odds. This is another one like Nurmagomedov where we will also revisit this in parlays, so we'll still be safe if she wins by decision. I don't think Yan has the same finishing ability, and we've seen Marina Rodriguez in her last 2 fights win 5-round main events in dominant fashion. The next fight on this list is going to be Jalin Turner versus Jamie Mullarkey. Jalin Turner is a super tall, rangy fighter with crisp striking, and Jamie Mullarkey is a really tough striker with power in his hands. In each of Turner's last 2 fights, he hurt his opponent with strikes and then choked them out while they were hurt. 9 of Mullarkey's 14 pro wins are by knockout. So on this one, I'm going Turner by submission or Mullarkey by knockout. Obviously, when you bet like this, one of them is going to lose, but if either one of them hit, it's going to be a net profit. This is called a hedge. For Turner to win by submission, it will pay out at plus 500, which is a great price in my opinion. And same goes for Mullarkey by knockout. That will be plus 300, which is a great price, like I said. I would recommend betting a little bit more on Mullarkey by knockout, but you don't want to break the bank for either of these. Maybe half a unit to 1 unit, anywhere from $5 to $20 for most of us on each of these will be fine. And the last matchup I want to cover for straight bets and props is going to be Edson Barboza versus Bryce Mitchell. Now this one is a really simple matchup. Edson Barboza is an elite striker and Bryce Mitchell is an elite grappler. I'm going Edson by knockout at plus 300 and Mitchell by submission at plus 200. Bryce Mitchell is king of the twister submission at the moment, and he's always getting his opponents in weird positions. Like I said before, this matchup is really simple. Either Edson's striking is going to be way too much for Mitchell, or Mitchell's grappling is going to be way too much for Barboza. It's going to be about who can pull that off. There is a decent chance that this will be a war and we'll end up going the full distance, so I wouldn't bet large on these ones, maybe half a unit. Anywhere from $5 to $15 should be fine for most of us. Alright, so that's it for the straight bets and props. Now let's get into the parlays. These are the picks that I feel confident enough on to throw onto parlays, where we can really take advantage of that plus money. I'm going to go in order of confidence, starting with my most confident pick, and that's going to be Umar Nurmagomedov. As I mentioned before, I think his wrestling is going to be way too much for Brian Kelleher, and people are even saying that the UFC is intentionally handing Kelleher an L here. This is why if you place prop bets for him to get a finish before, we aren't worried about him winning by decision, because we'll still win money either way. Since he's my most confident pick on the card, I would recommend putting him on most, if not all of your parlays. So let's say if you placed 4 parlays, for example, he's at least on 3. If you placed 8, maybe he's on 6. I usually don't like to put any pick or one fighter on all parlays, just in case you get burned by an upset or a bad decision, but I definitely would feel confident throwing him on most of your parlays. The next one on this list is going to be Rafael Dos Anjos. Now this one is going to be on super short notice for Renato Moicano, so it's going to be at a catch weight of 160, which arguably is perfect for RDA. RDA was always said to have been too big for lightweight and too small for welterweight. That, along with the fact that he's a former world champion who looked great in his last fight in his debut back at lightweight, who just spent a full training camp getting ready for Rafael Fiziev, versus Moicano, who has had less than a week to prepare for the fight. I'm leaning strongly on RDA, and I think it would be a big upset if he were to lose. I love Moicano, he's got great skills, but RDA has no weaknesses, he never gets finished, and I think he does everything Moicano does, just a little bit better. The next guy on my parlay list is going to be Tagir Ulanbekov. Like I briefly mentioned before, he's a young up-and-coming Russian wrestler, going against a guy who's at the tail end of his career in Tim Elliott. That elite Russian wrestling and pace is just tough to deal with for anyone, and I do think this is a very safe bet. For all three of these guys that I've given you so far, I would feel confident putting them on most of your parlays. The next one on the list is going to be Marina Rodriguez. As we discussed, I think she is going to get the finish in this fight, and if not, she can easily win by decision, and we will still win money if we parlay her. Like I said before, she's had 2 main events in her last 2 fights where she dominated her opponents. Her record is slightly more impressive than Yan's, and her experience is against tougher opponents. I think she's going to be too much for Yan, and I'm very confident in Marina Rodriguez. The next one is going to be kind of a 2-parter. The first part of that is going to be Sergey Spivak to win versus Greg Hardy, and the second part is going to be that this fight will not go the distance. Obviously, in a heavyweight fight, most people tend to think that it's not going to last the full distance. Greg Hardy is a former pro football player, huge athlete who, is going for the knockout every time he's in the cage. Spivak has ground and pound, grappling, dirty boxing up against the cage. He kind of wears on you, and he'll either get the finish or win a decision usually. So that's why I'm betting this way. I don't see any possible way that Greg Hardy wins this fight via decision. If Spivak were to lose, it's almost undoubtedly going to be by knockout. So what I'm personally doing is putting Sergey Spivak on half of all of my parlays and won't go the distance on the entire other half of my parlays. The reason I love plays like this so much is because not only am I really confident that one of these is going to hit and win us money, there's a really strong chance that they both hit and that Spivak is the one who gets the finish. So this is a great way to reduce your risk and increase your possible gain. Out of those 6 bets, you can easily form 8 unique parlays, half of which have Spivak, half of which won't go the distance in that same fight, and they will be different combinations of Nurmagomedov, RDA, Ulanbekov, and Rodriguez. Each of them will be 4 legs or 4 picks per parlay, and each of them will be plus money. This way, you have reduced your risk in case an upset happens or a bad judging decision without reducing your gain. Some other potential picks that you can sprinkle on a parlay or 2 will include Jalin Turner. As I said before, he's a young star on the rise. He has dangerous strikes and submissions. It's just that he has a tall test in front of him in Jamie Mullarkey. So that's the reason I personally only placed him on 1 or 2 parlays. Same kind of thing goes for Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is making his welterweight debut. He was already a pretty big middleweight, so I'm interested in seeing him make his debut. He's been working on his wrestling for the past year or so I'm hoping to see him take things seriously. He has all the skills to be a great fighter, and I think the UFC set this fight up to welcome him into the division. Of course, I have my fears of Kevin Holland getting out-wrestled and just laying on his back talking shit, but I really want to believe that he's taking it seriously now. I would definitely recommend sprinkling those 2 guys on maybe 1 or 2 parlays each. I definitely think at least one of those 2 should be able to win. So hopefully some of this is making sense. I'm actually going to drop more content explaining how to set up parlays and other betting principles and terms. It's going to be a sports betting for scrubs series, so that will go into a little bit more detail in how to set up these parlays and how it truly does reduce your risk without reducing your gain at all. As for now, don't be intimidated. Some people are not comfortable with parlays at all, let alone placing 4, 6, 8, 10 tickets. But if you feel that way, I would recommend lowering your unit size and just try it out. I can guarantee you it's a tried and true way of betting that I have personally had success with. But anyways, on to the main event, Masvidal versus Covington. So I think we all know that Masvidal is a lethal striker with finishing ability, and Colby is an elite wrestler with insane cardio. We also know that they are friends turned foes, so I think that's going to add a little extra fire to this fight. I think that's going to give an advantage to Masvidal because Masvidal is used to fighting in the streets where the pace is a bit higher, so he's used to that chaos. Another thing is all that experience they have training together. Masvidal wasn't able to go full gangster and just flying knee him in training. So I think that's another small advantage to Masvidal in this fight. Because I don't personally like Colby and I'm a fan of Jorge, I'm going to go with Jorge at plus 250. I think that's a great price, and I think he does have a shot of getting it done. I wouldn't argue with anybody who says Colby's going to win by decision. So it's either going to go to decision or Masvidal will get a knockout. That's my opinion. So I'm betting on Masvidal personally. If you're not like me and you don't let your biases get in the way of your bets like a good gambler, then maybe you're thinking Colby will win by decision, which I will not argue. Most sportsbooks actually currently have him listed as a favorite or minus money to win by decision. I think it was minus 115, which is pretty rare. Usually, since there's so many options of prop bets, they're all going to be plus money. So this means the sportsbooks really think he's going to win by decision. If you're adamant that he will win by decision, you can either place one big single bet on him to win by decision, or you can parlay it with some of the other picks I've given out. For example, at minus 115, if you parlay him with RDA at minus 170, that's already going to be plus money in itself, which that's a great example of a really solid ticket. So if you're leaning Colby, I would definitely parlay Colby by decision, maybe a straight bet. And if you can't stand Colby, just sprinkle Masvidal, which I'm sure you're already going to do, and you'll be happy with that plus 250 if it does hit. That's going to cut it for this one. I'm going to try to stay more consistent with my pick videos as the UFC events roll on. I'm also working on my sports betting for Scrubs series. It's going to go into a bit more detail of how I set up parlays and cover some of the terms and principles that I use when I set up my bets. So that way you can eventually transition from just following picks to knowing how to make bets yourself. So make sure to stay tuned for that, guys. If you like this video at all, shoot me a like. If you're looking for more picks in the future, definitely subscribe. All of that stuff helps me a lot in the algorithm. But anyway, stay tuned for the next one, guys. Good luck to all of you this weekend, and we'll see you at the window.